Hello, so today we're looking at how to translate shapes. When we translate a shape, we are moving it. The size of the shape will stay the same and the direction that the shape is facing will stay the same. So all we will be doing is moving it. So I've got this shape here, and if I want to translate this shape, I can move it up, I can move it down, I could move it to the right, or I could move it to the left. So I might want to move my shape, I might want to translate my shape 2 spaces up. So I would go 1, 2. My shape has stayed exactly the same size and it has stayed the same orientation. So it's not changed direction in the way that it's facing. I've just moved it up 2. Let's go back to this shape and I will get rid of this one. So this time I might want to move my shape down 3 spaces. So pause the video and have a little think about where you think it will end up. Okay, so let's have a little look together. So I'm going to move it down 3 spaces. So I'm going to move it down 1, 2, 3. Everything else about my shape has stayed exactly the same. I've just moved it down 3 spaces. Let's go back to my shape again. This time I'm going to move it to the left and I'm going to move it to the left 2 spaces. 1, 2. Again, it has stayed the same. I've just moved it 2 spaces to the left. Now let's have a little look at where it might end up if I moved it 4 spaces to the right. So I'd like you to pause it and have a think about where you think it will end up. Okay, let's have a look together. So I'm moving it to the right, so I'm moving it this way. And 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to the right. Now, sometimes I might have 2 instructions. So I might say, move it up 1 square and to the right 2 squares. So up 1 square, to the right 2 squares. So up 1 square and then to the right 2. 1, 2. Let's have a go now. I would like to move my shape, and I'm going to write this one on here for you to remind you. I'd like to move it down 3, and I'd like to move it right 4. So down 3 and right 4. Have a little think about where you think that might end up. Okay, let's look together. So I'm going to move it down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to move it 4 spaces to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it should have ended up here. Let's have a little go now with this shape. And this shape is different, as you can see, because the other one, wherever I put it, it was just 1 square. This one you can see is 3. So I'm just going to have a look and see if that changes it at all. So I want to move this shape 1 space down. There we are. 1 space down. You can see it overhangs onto the other shape a little bit, but that's okay. Where do you think this shape would be if you were to move it down 2 and right 1? Have a little look. Okay, let's try it together. So down 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to go right 1. Now, a mistake that could have been made is we might have said, that's down 1. That is not down 1, okay? You've actually gone down twice there. If I move it down once, it's there. It's an easy mistake to make to think that that is, I've moved the whole thing down once, but it isn't. If I look very carefully, and I'm going to get my spotlight here. If I look very carefully at just this one square, if I move that one square down 1, this square would end up here. So if I do a little annotating, I'm going to put an X on that one there, okay? So now you'll see what I mean. This square, I need it to be moved down once. If I just focus on one square, I'm moving that one square down once. And I was expecting my arrow to move along with it, but it did not. My cross, sorry. So let me have another little go at that. If I rub that out, okay. I'm going to try with this pen instead. Here's my X there. And if I move this shape once, oh, it's not quite working how I want it to work, is it? Let's group that. I'm just going to group that together. There we go. And now when I move it, it will move how I want it with any luck. So if I move that down once, you can see that my square with the cross in it has moved down 1 square. It hasn't moved down 2. If I moved it down to here, that is not one move. You can see that my square with the X in it has actually travelled twice. Okay. So if I want to move this down 1, 2, and then move it once to the right, I'll end up there. I'd like you to have a go now. Where do you think it will end up if I move my shape 1 square up, so 1 up and 1 left? Pause the video and have a little go. Okay, so 1 up and 1 left. Again, we're going to focus on the square that I've drawn my X in. I'm going to move it 1 up and 1 left. I wonder what mistake some people might make. Have a little think, pause the video. Okay, the mistake that people might have made is they'd have thought that was 1 move up and that was 1 move to the left, when in actual fact that is 2 moves up and 2 moves to the left. So your job today is to have a little look at this. So you're going to complete the translations. So you're going to translate, move the shape 4 squares to the right. Again, you're going to move it up 4 squares. You're going to move it to the right 4 squares. So count along your squares very carefully. Then you're going to have a go at moving up, and then with 2 operations, with 2 instructions. Now, when we get on to question 2, you will see that the shapes aren't just 1 square anymore. And this is where we have to be really mindful, like we were on this question, where we had to focus in on 1 square to make sure that when we were doing 1 move, we weren't actually doing 2 moves. We have to make sure we still only do that 1 move. So to do that, you should either focus on one of the squares or one of the points. So if I drew I'm just going to make this slightly bigger so that we can really look at that question together. Just going to make it a little bit bigger again. Okay, and if I look at this triangle, here we go. Right, if I look at that triangle that you can see there, triangle A, it says translate shape A, 5 squares to the right and 3 squares down. So what I'm going to do to focus in and make sure I don't make any errors is I'm going to choose a corner, and it doesn't matter which corner you choose. I'm going to choose this one here, and I'm just going to mark it. Okay, so now I'm going to translate the shape 5 squares to the right. So that would be 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares, 5 squares. So I know I've done my 5 squares to the right. And then I'm going to go 3 squares down. So again, I'm going to go from this corner and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Now, when I come to draw my shape, I know that this point here is this point here. Now, I'm just going to get a different coloured pen. I know that that point is this one here, and then I have 2 options. I can go from this corner and count the same as well. So I can think, okay, 5 squares to the right, and this time I'm going from this corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then again I'd go 3 down. 1, 2, 3. So that would be that point there. And then I can draw across. I can draw my line. And that's the bottom line there. And then my shape is 1, 2, 3 squares up. And you'll have a ruler, so it'll be far more accurate than I've just drawn. So when we're looking at these shapes, we want to find the point and go from the point. So mark across on the point and then translate. I'm going to just do one more again with you, okay? So B, it says translate shape B 4 squares to the left and 7 squares down. So again, I'm going to find one point and just go from one point, and I'm choosing this point here. And now I need to go 4 squares to the left. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's I've done my 4 squares to the left, and then 7 squares down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this point here is here. That's that point there. Now I could count across from this point and again do my 4 squares left and my 7 squares down, or I could think, okay, I've got that point there and I know that my shape is going to be the same size, and this is now 3 squares across. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then I know that that is 1 square. So that measures 1 square, and I know it measures in 1 square. And then I know from here it's down 2, 1, 2, and from here, and then 2 squares up, 1 square up, and then I've got my next shape. So there I can either, I always have to go from my 1 point. So for my first point, I must go and count across and then up or down. And then once I've got my first point drawn, I can either carry on counting each of the points, or I can then look at the shape and draw it accurately from what I know about this shape. Okay? Then, oh, let me just get rid of the ones from there. Okay. Then you've got this one here. So Dora has translated triangle A 2 squares to the right and 7 squares up. You have to decide whether or not Dora is correct. And if you look very carefully, it says explain why. So when you come to explain why, you need to think about what we found here. Okay, when we were trying to move it 1 up, it's not the whole shape. It doesn't have to go completely underneath. You look at that 1 square and make sure that the 1 square has moved 1 up, 1 up. Okay, so rather than doing 2 jumps, you just do the 1 jump. And then once you've done that, you need to show what the translation has been. So you can see that the 2 squares, you've got square A, and what has that translation been? And again, you need to go from that 1 point and count up or down, left or right, how many squares. Shape A has been translated how many squares to the right and how many squares down. So your first point would be to go to the right, and then you have to count. So we'll do this one together, and I've gone 1, 2, 3 squares to the right. And then how many have I moved down? 1, 2. 2 squares down. Again, go from the 1 point and mark that point with an X so you can remember which point you've gone from. Okay? Then shape 5. A shape has been drawn on a coordinate grid. So now you need to use your knowledge from last week when we did coordinates and apply it to this piece of work. Translate shape D 4 squares to the left and 6 squares up. Label the new shape E. So this whole shape needs to be translated. Then you need to describe the translation from shape D to shape E. So first of all, you need to translate it, and then you need to describe the translation. And then it says, what do you notice? Does this always happen? And I'd like you to look at the 2 sets of coordinates that you've got. So find 1 point. It could be this point here, if you like, and compare the coordinates for one of those points. What do you notice? And then there's a bit more practice here on translating your shapes. Good luck, and if you need to rewind the video, you can rewind it again and have another little look at how to translate shapes.